hear from you. How are you doing?
Good, dude. We'll have to catch up, maybe a little bit later today. I'd love to, if you have another 5 minutes, would love to catch up. I know we got a tight 47-minute opportunity here. So
Yeah.
thanks for coming on again, man. I got to tell you, I was really glad and thrilled that you came on. I was wondering how to ask you. You had this great thing with your tick, all natural, open source, community concept around the lawn spray, right? The tick spray, yeah.
Yep. It's called Tick Evict. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tick Evict for the talent show. It just made sense, right? And we've kind of spun off onto this whole journey here, right? So you thought maybe we might not do this again. So here we are. What's going on, Jim?
I don't mind every podcast feeling like it's the last one. I also feel it's a great way to live one's life. Every day thinking, what? This could be the last day. So I had better do those things that are on my bucket list. I better help those people that I know need help, that I was planning on helping next week. Every day lived like it's your last day brings incredible joy and incredible freedom, incredible liberation of the mind. I mean, it's interesting. I know we don't have a topic, and I thought it would be great, to just chat and get your thoughts. And, tomorrow is the 20th year anniversary of 9/11. And I thought I would ask you about that. Joe, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no, I love it. Hold on. You love to talk so much, and then whenever you throw it to me, it's like the one time I decide I'm going to sneak in a little mic change.
That's all right.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea, man. Let's talk.
Yeah, it is so relevant, and I'm glad to kind of see that the media is making an effort, which is really good. I have not come across any truthful information, but it is the kind of thing that could be easily forgotten. And I'm glad that, at least on the anniversaries, people are more or less reminded about it. But, we've got, after 20 years, we've got a whole generation that was not impacted by it. And we know that the attention span of the new generation and the forthcoming generations is very, very limited. So, yeah, I just figured, let me ask you, how'd that go for you that day? What have you learned since then? That's an even more important, instead of like, where were you on the day JFK died? Where were you, when the towers were brought down? It's more like, it's been 20 years.
It has. Have
we learned anything?
Well, I've learned a lot, that's for sure. And I haven't thought much about 9/11. I really haven't. But it's there, right? It's an afterthought. And what I mean by that, it's not gone, right? It's in the back of the head, I think, right? So when I say I haven't thought about it, that's consciously. When I reflect minimally on 9/11, this 20th anniversary, it's been around. I was born in 1981, so it's just numbers. But I guess I have the unique privilege, whatever. That's a horrible word for it, but I have a unique perspective, I guess, is better, of 20 years post, 20 years pre 9/11 this year, right? So I've had half my life in both sides of a real big divider, and our in how the world is working, right? So there's there's the World War I divide. There's all these different stamps in life, so it's not a privilege at all. But it's that's my perspective, and it's you mentioned a generation not being exposed or impacted by it. Well, they live amongst us, and we're impacted by it. I think I don't understand the psychological impact, right? Specific to myself, because there had to be one. I was sophomore in college, and I expected expected American greatness, and it never happened. You
No,
know.
no,
So
it did
anyway,
not.
like I thought I was in a great, like, kind of like, not all of a sudden, but many years after 9/11, it was like, hold a second, like the country I was even in high school and in the 90s wasn't what I thought it was, right? Like, anyway, it's been a real eye opener, right? And like anything, I think it has created also great opportunity as well. So anyway, I don't want to ramble too much. You start to say something.
Well, you said, like, what is the psychological impact? I have an opinion on that. I would say that has completely dampened, if not shut down, people's care. CARE.
Well, how
Meaning,
so?
well, I think that when there is enough repetition in the media, I'll just talk about continuous repetition. All right. Because this is a combat strategy. It's one of many psychological warfare devices that everyone, meaning all the countries of this world, use and have used for 100 years or longer to get a target group, an audience, to stop thinking about something. To see, because what happens with repetition, I mean, I'm talking about continuous repetition. Say, for example, all of the soldiers that have died in the Middle East. No one's going to know off the top of their head how many soldiers have died. It would take an enormous amount of research to find that data. This is not the late 90s. In the late 90s, the only information that was out there were PhDs who had posted their thesis. I mean, you could find everything that you needed to learn in the late 90s. If I tried to find on my phone the number of soldiers that have died in the Middle East, we'll just stick with the United States. I would love to find that out because it would be an enormous amount of work. It would go faster on a laptop, but the phone is a particularly dumbed down instrument. And anybody who's out there who's listening is thinking, oh, that doesn't happen to me. That is how your brain functions. Your brain is an executive functioning organism, meaning it's got all these different kinds of things that it's divided up and it works together, and it's focusing on survival. It's focusing on making decisions. It's focusing on choosing between right and wrong, which is a little different from decisions about survival or logistics or efficiency. And the brain cannot take in all the stimuli. Uh, our species, Homo sapiens species, can only perceive a very, very thin, narrow band of light, of what we call visible light out of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. And I give that example because what I'm saying is the brain's job is to parse. It is to weed out. It is to decide what is wheat and what is chaff, what should be retained and worked on and what should not be and is not valuable or relevant. Things that are above our eyesight, physically above, like a roof, the inside of a roof, the inside of a ceiling. People do not look up. People do not look up. If I wanted to plant something for you to not see in plain sight, I would stick it right on the roof of your ceiling, right underneath, on top of your ceiling. People do not look up. I encourage people to look up, not just like outside, but look up everywhere. You'd be shocked to find out what is hanging off of
All
stores
right.
and
So
people's home ceilings.
yeah. So get back to this continuous repetition.
Yeah, so
I like where you're going here.
repetition is used. Like, say, for example, the attack on Benghazi. Okay, if you go to
Right.
Wikipedia, you're going to see that 4 Americans were died. That's not true. Just read any international news and you'll see that there were over 75 people that died on that day. And if anybody remembers the news, Dick Cheney, Bush, all of these politicians saying the phrase Benghazi this, Benghazi that, Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi. Saturday Night Live had a skit on it to make fun of it so that when we see that kind of repetition, we also will chuckle. Okay, repetition is intentional. Repetition is all about causing a person to trigger the executive functioning shutdown mechanism, the executive functioning filtering mechanism. If you hear something too many times and it's not like your house is on fire, you absolutely will ignore it. This is a physiological truth. So
Wait,
in the
go
case
back
of
to how it shut.
9/11,
Can you explain? Hold on. Can you explain how this shuts down the executive functioning? Like that's
yeah,
key because I think people know what that is, right? So basically, Jim's saying that there's a way to shut down your ability to think clearly, is for just to break
to
it down
think
simple,
clearly,
right?
to
And to make plans
identify.
into the future that make sense to your longevity.
Right. So take, for example, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. This is probably the best, simplest example or parable to explain this physiological phenomena. If Jim says this, Jim says that, Jim says this, well, Jim said that, Jim said this, Jim says that, you tune out. If a boy says, oh, I saw a wolf, I saw a wolf, I saw a wolf, by the third time, you're ready to tune it out. Tuning out is triggered both unconsciously and consciously. I can choose, after considering something, that I wish to tune it out. But if the subject is intentionally bombarding me, if it's a proactive effort to repeat something continuously over and over, and I bring up the media because this is where we see it the most, the brain will turn off. The brain will not notice. It'll ignore it, like what's on the underneath your ceiling. So that is what happens, and it's a form of psychological warfare, like so many other kinds. Uh, I don't even want to. We don't have to get into all the different types of psychological combat. 9/11 is where we started on this, and I think that the psychological impact is that people are completely dumb, deaf, and blind when it comes to what happened on that day, what the number of soldiers that have died in the Middle East. People don't know. Do they care? I think that people care. I think if you interview people, they'd say, yeah, I care. But actions speak louder than words. How do you care? Have you thought
Well, that
about it? Have you talked
well
about it with
that's
somebody?
that's what you started off with. People stopped to care. People stopped caring, or no more. You highlighted that. So what does that mean specifically? What do they stop caring about? What?
Caring about another's life, even if they don't know them. Let's just start with something
So
basic. How about
it broke
caring
it
for the
down. It
country?
broke it down. Hold on. So what happened on 9/11 and some of the programming after that was enough to have us numbed globally. I mean, globally, just like across relationships, borders, wherever it was, care less about human suffering.
That's right. And of course, this was, the repetition was also
Really?
impacted. Yeah, that's
Really?
my opinion. That's
So
my
hold,
opinion.
Jim, and I'm not coming at you. I just want to make sure I'm not. So
Well, there's also
the mark.
distraction.
There's
There's things, if you've got,
So, no, that's a big mark. No, that's a big marker. So a big drop in the level of caring globally, right? That's huge, right?
yeah,
So you got my attention.
yeah, I think,
Like I could,
it's,
you look
yeah,
at that on a graph, right? If you want care to grow, right? If you want our ability to care and nurture each other to grow over time, right? If that's on a graph, like you would look at a stock chart, you want that to trend over time up and to the right, right?
yeah, exactly.
It sounds like you're describing a market crash, I guess of epic proportions, right? In our level of care. Um,
That's
wow.
exactly
Okay.
right.
Okay. Go
That's
ahead.
exactly right.
I feel you
What's
now.
really, sorry?
No, I'm with you now.
Well, what's really happening, I see, because I think that most people care. That's a pretty generalized uh, conclusion, but I think that if you were to ask individuals, whatever, in this country, they'd say, yeah, do you care? I think the answer would be, yes, I care. Um, have you thought about 9/11? Have you talked about it? Have you ever considered some of the conflicting information that makes it look really screwed up? See, Joe, I was one block away, 46 flights up, with the South Tower occupying most of my all glass western facing wall window. Very fancy skyscraper. I saw the whole thing. But here's what I want to say, because there's no point in going through all the conflicting information. If I say the phrase conflicting information, there will be a lot of people listening who will perk up because they also are awake and they're figuring out that something's going on. But for the majority of people, conflicting information, oh, well, that's all of those theories that have been propagated over the last 20 years. That's fine. The folks that just want to shove that 9/11 into the category of yet another disaster. It's outside of my control. I still care, but I'm pretty deaf, dumb, and blind to the whole situation. And I'm going to be deaf, dumb, and blind again in the future. Look, I don't hold anything against those people, and it's not for me to judge, okay? Perhaps they're very asleep, but there are others who are just trying to wake up. They're feeling the need, they're in the middle of a nightmare in sleep, and they're willfully trying to get out of this nightmare. And then all of a sudden they start to see coincidences happen in their life, regular old coincidences. And then things start to happen even more frequently, or a coincidence starts to really feel like it's a mega coincidence. Like, wow, I thought the odds of that happening were very low, but here's this other thing, and here's 7 more things that have happened to me recently, and they're completely impossible that they've happened to me. I can't get into in this class why that happens from a level of physics. I don't know if I would love to talk about that sometime. But the bottom line is that for the people who are starting to notice that things are, not just that things have to change, but that they are literally in a pot of stew that is being slowly boiled to the point where they're not going to know when that water is 212 degrees. They're gonna be in there at 200, and they're gonna just keep trying to survive. They're gonna keep going to work, and then all of a sudden the pot's gonna boil, and they're gonna say, "Fuck! What the hell happened? How come I didn't get out of here when I had the chance? What was I paying attention to? What was I doing at work that forced me to completely ignore all of these lives that are being lost?" The numbers are in, Joe. We've got 10 million children going missing on the planet. And I'm just looking at the big numbers. Germany, 100 million children per year. 80, and they have a population that's not even that large. The United States, 460,000, I'm sorry, getting these numbers. Germany has a population of 80 million. They have 100,000 children that go missing every year. The UK has a population of 25 million. They've got 200,000 children that go missing every year. Australia has 80,000 people missing, children missing every single year. The United States, 480,000 people, children every single year going missing. That's about 10 million children going missing every single year. Okay? I mean, we're talking about 9/11. Who's talking about the children? Or do people care? Yeah, I think that people do care. But the people who really care are the people who are woken up, and I'll use that phrase even though the media has painted dark circles around it. Waking up means that you want to do something. You're tired and sick of it. You know that things are not right in your own sphere of work, in whatever a person does in their occupation, at their job. They know that weird shit is happening at their job. They spend 9 to 5 every single day. They're close to what they're doing. They've seen weird stuff. Do they chalk it up and say it doesn't matter? Well, what you need to do is you need to share that information with other people that go to work. Now, I could tell you countless stories of the technology that I have sold that have contributed to this, to the incredibly disastrous problems that are on this earth. It's not my story. It's everybody's story. Everybody has seen something. Anybody who's ever had to deal with health insurance has their story. And I'm not talking about, oh, it was so difficult to do. When people end up spending all that time to get a simple claim paid, they start to scratch their head and they wonder, wait a minute, isn't insurance about something, that may or may not happen? And isn't health, or even like the degradation of the body, like mathematically measurable? Even a simple thing like that. And people really react though when they don't get their bill paid. And what are they going to do? Oh, well, they're going to complain a little bit maybe to somebody. Well, here's what you really need to be doing. You type into Google health insurance whistleblower. You type into Google 9/11 whistleblower. You type into Google missing children whistleblower. Iraq war whistleblower. Benghazi whistleblower. And then you put it all together because it's all connected. And then when you start to get scared, because that's really one of the biggest hallmarks of being awake, that's when you work on your fear. You remember that you can control your own adrenaline. You calm yourself down. You say, where are my feet? You look at, see where you are. You feel your feet. Okay, take a breath. I'm present. Being present is one of your biggest protections. And you say to yourself, this makes me incredibly sad. I have to tell my family. Your family will trust you. Start there. And what you're going to find out as you slowly but surely start to talk about this with people that you genuinely trust. I'm not talking about getting on some soapbox or having a podcast, talking about my personal experience with something that all of a sudden is exactly the same thing that a whistleblower was talking about. Talking about taking your time, managing your fear, being present, taking a breath, and then genuinely appreciating what you have today. Living life, living today like it could be your last day.
And what happens is that the world becomes very, very small, but also possibilities become unlimited and your access to everything becomes unlimited.
Oh, I perfectly agree with that because that kind of gets back to the very first sentence of the very first podcast. Anything is possible. That is such a powerful thing. It's not just a statement. I try not to use phrases that are too ambiguous or too new age or too superficial or too broad or too general. But knowing that anything is possible is how we take advantage of something called the observer effect, which is a physics principle that is non-contested science. It was discovered over 120 years ago. Scientists have won Nobel Prizes contributing to our understanding of quantum physics. It's called the observer effect. One of the most important scientific experiments that have proven this countless times, meaning it's every scientist's duty to try to replicate each other's work and to see if it's true or if it's falsified or if it's a one-time only. And the double slit experiment proves the observer effect. It provides the reason why placebo medication can cure. Placebo medication means that there is nothing active inside the pill. There's no actual medicine inside the pill. Every single new product that is created by the pharmacological industry, pharmaceutical industry, begins with double-blind tests for placebos. Simply that they want to figure out if what they've just created is going to be more powerful than the mind's ability to have impact over the matter of the body. The mind has the ability to create impact on your physical body. We know that this is true, but what we don't know is the extent that this is possible. Oh, well, I told that person who was dying of cancer that they were going to be well and that I wanted to have dinner with them next month when I got into town. And they loved me so much, all of a sudden they were well. The doctors couldn't explain it. Well, guess what? That person genuinely believed that what was said was true. And they somehow convinced themselves that they would be well. I mean, our understanding of this only goes so far. We've got a small number of people who understand all of this science and a very large number of people who do not have access to it. If you try to find, and I do this every few years, I look up various controversial issues to see if new video has been released, to see if There were deathbed confessions to see if someone blew the whistle, to see if how hard it is to get information about a controversial topic. I'll tell you the truth. The double slit experiment, for being such an important cornerstone of all known science, it's very, very hard to find examples. I mean, you'll find it in Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is not providing factual, truthful information.
So so listen, you talked about the observer principle. There was a point before that that brought up the observer principle. Like, okay, so now we know what the observer principle basically means. The mind
Well,
can
the,
do
the observer
anything, right?
principle is the phenomena of the human mind having impact over
Right.
matter, physical matter. I'll just limit it to the human mind having impact over one's own biological body, over one's own
Okay.
physical body. I think that right there is enough for people to see with a little bit of effort that it's true. Obviously, we can worry about something and then physically start to feel debilitated. We could, and of course, if that can happen, you can do the opposite. You can have a peaceful thought, and you can think about what that would be like across the world and what it would be like for people to share. And then all of a sudden, you'll have put yourself in a positive mood if you go about it correctly. And I brought this up because of how people forget of how hard it is to find information nowadays on the internet about particularly important or controversial things. I'm talking about how people have forgotten about something called 9/11, which for quite some time, at least for the first 10 years until about 2011, it was really considered the hottest topic. I mean, for people in New York, there were studies that came out. If you thought about 9/11 every single day for 10 years, you were physically diagnosable as traumatized. So I guess I'm traumatized. I was extremely close to the whole situation. Did I
Do you want
answer
to
your
share
question,
any?
Joe? Did I
Yeah,
talk
well,
about the relevance of?
yeah, we'll have to listen to the replay. I think we may have missed a thread there. Maybe it'll come back, or
Yeah,
or not. All right,
they're all
it's okay.
important things. Maybe I'm just treating this podcast like my last podcast. Of course, I'm holding back on a lot
I
of
think you
really
were talking
important
about. I
information.
think you were talking about. I think we were on that, right? I think we were on the importance of the liberty and, you know, yeah, taking that frame that like this is it, right? The liberation there, and I think that's what got into the observer principle.
Yeah,
But
if
anyway,
that
yeah,
alone, if people see, here's the thing, right? So Facebook, Google are proud to admit that the results that you get on your phone is going to be different from somebody else who has a phone, is going to be, and phones provide different results than laptops do. This is a disaster. How can you trust anything today? And it's not just because of that fact, because of those press releases. It's just observable. I mean, I was on the internet in the very, very beginning, before there were graphics, before there
so
was
what do you say?
pornography.
So what? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said something, right? I was
No,
using
no,
the
no,
internet before there was even pornography. I mean, this is
no.
and all we want, we meaning the pioneers of the internet, what we wanted to the people that really were trying to proliferate Linux, which became the de facto standard for all systems to run the internet on. We were just drilling the internet. We were constantly looking to discover everything that we possibly could. And many of us were trying to figure out what are the limits? What are the limits of this database, of this, what are the limits of all this continuous contribution by volunteers of information? It was very, very vast at the very beginning. I couldn't think of a question that I could not get answered back in 94 and 95.
You
Today,
want to?
it's very different. It's very different today.
Oh yeah.
Look up a school shooting. Why are the same people showing up at these different school shootings? There's a shooting in Boston. All of a sudden, one of the participants is down in Florida on giving an interview on the mass media about how they were at multiple shootings. Just look this stuff up. You're going to have to get on a laptop. You're going to have some time. You're going to have to make sure that you're centered and that you've listened to the Peace on Earth manifestation podcast or the Steam Train how to control your fear podcast. because this shit will wake you up quick, because anything's possible, and you have to really parse what is valuable from what is not valuable. When you start looking up these whistleblower queries, just know it's meant to be. It's important for you to wake up. Right now, everything is very polarized. People are very polarized. There are less and less people really on the fence. You've either got people who have just bought into all the bullshit, ready to use Facebook regardless of the surveillance, don't have a clue about the talent economy, what it would be like to share instead of having your labor be converted into currency which can be stolen. And then you've got the other people who are scared shitless, who have a very good clue about the problems that are happening on this planet, like all of those missing children, 10 million missing children a year. They want to do something. Some will, some won't, some may be able to, but there are very few people who are in the middle who don't have an opinion about COVID, who, if you've not done any work, if you've not done any research
Interesting
at all,
point. Finish this thought, but then we're going to go. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, look at the time. Yeah, I mean, if
No, we're not going to go. We're going to go down this rabbit hole. You just
yeah,
opened
the
can of
COVID
worms.
rat hole. I mean, it's funny. Like right before this podcast, I was thinking, how the TV cartoon show The Simpsons supposedly always predicts things. So I thought to myself, let me type in as few words as possible. Simpsons, COVID. Well, guess what? In 1993, there was an episode in the 4th season called Osaka Flu. And it was a playbook for what has happened to us over the last year and a half, 2 years. Playbook. Am I woken up yet? No, but I'm starting to get scared. I'm starting to realize, ooh, fuck, what can I do? Should I do? What can I do so that I won't get harmed? How much can I say on a podcast that will not threaten my being? I'm holding back. Trust me, I'm holding back. All I'm here for, I've come a very, very long way to get to this place today, to have this conversation with you, Joe. It has taken eons to get to this place, to say on a public podcast, 10 million children are going missing across the countries of the world. You've got countries that only have a population of 25 million people, and they're still losing 250,000 children per year. So let's just figure this out. 25 million people. Well, let's just say that a third of them are children. Okay. So what's that? 7 million children, and you got total. You got 200,000 of them missing every year. What is that? That's like 1 out of 40 children are basically, snap your fingers, they're going to be gone statistically. What's the rat hole? Let's do the rat hole.
People don't care about COVID. People don't care about this persistent, perpetual lockdown. People don't care.
If it happens gradually enough, people will not care. If it happens repetitiously enough, people will not care. It's actually, it's funny. Care is such an important and valuable noun. There are many people that take that word and they do the weirdest stuff with that word. Care is ultimately valuable. I won't use it. It's not going to be as helpful if I use the word love, because love is what we're talking about. Love is care. Love is appreciation. But love has so much baggage, and it's very hard for people to say the word love. But it's not hard for people to say the word appreciate, or to think about what appreciation is like. Think about what you genuinely appreciate. What an incredibly emotionally wonderful thought you can conjure in your mind instead of fear of COVID. So I think that people care, but it is well documented. Sun Tzu understood that if you say something enough times, or if you gradually, cumulatively enslave a population, if you gradually imprison your enemies. Well, the majority of people are going to look the other way. And this is where that phrase comes from. Oh, like the famous Holocaust phrase. In fact, I'm gonna quote it correctly.
Work will set you free.
Um, let's see how quickly I can get it. Oh yeah, first they came for the socialists. And I did not speak out. Once again, I'm having a little bit of a hard time finding a very important and very, very common quote. Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous, Joe. I mean, I'm just trying to find a simple quote, and I'm really good at this. Trust me. I've been searching Google since before Google. We used to use something called Alta Vista, and before that, we used something called Waze. I mean, first they came. Now, how am I going to find this? I'm going to have to find it. Okay, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, but I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I'm bringing this up. It's gonna cause a lot of different sensations in people, but I'm bringing this up because of the ability to slowly attack an enemy, to slowly imprison an enemy, and how you do it. It's slow, it's gradual. It's how you defeat a motion detector. If you go to the Walmart, you buy yourself a motion detector, you set it up in your room, you can absolutely defeat a motion detector. Mythbusters showed us how to do it. You just basically.
It's also it might be also how you defeat emotion, right?
Oh,
Slowly over time.
I'm so glad you said that.
I think that's what we kind of talked about. If it wasn't the last one, it was the one before that, where there's just a malaise, right? I mean, that's part of that drop in care.
Yes, it's a lethargy. It's a lethargy. It's mostly a feeling of helplessness. In other words, that's not exactly correct. What is the end goal of capturing an army slowly is probably the safest way for me to describe this. Is for people to give up. It's for people to not act. If you have large numbers of people who don't act, I mean, I know somebody, you know this person as well, but they're no longer working for our company. She had COVID for 10 months. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing about it? Like what? Because I was thinking, whatever she's doing doesn't sound like it's maybe she needs to change her game or try some different supplements or something. She says, I'm not doing anything. How did this happen? How can people have an infectious disease, the most infectious, far more infectious than any organism that's ever been on the planet, okay? Off the charts infectious. I guess we were hit with big gamma ray bomb from the sun or something, because mutations like this just don't happen, okay? If you are a scientist and you study microbiology, evolutionary microbiology, you know that this does not happen. But who are you going to talk to? Do you talk to anybody? Do you mention it? Are you fearful of your safety? Are you worried that somebody's going to shoot you down, call you an idiot? Does it make sense for me to even mention what I know, what an evolutionary microbiologist with all their years of experience might know? The answer is, in general, it's much safer to keep your mouth shut and hope that it doesn't happen to you. But this great Holocaust Memorial Museum in the United States, in Washington, has it printed on the stones in that memorial, in that museum. They came for the socialists, but I wasn't. They came for the trade unionists. I was not one of them. They came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew. Basically, people thought they were safe, and then they came for me, and no one was left to speak for me. I'm in a pot of boiling water. I'm a frog in a pot of boiling water. They are boiling the frog. We don't know it. Who are they? This is probably the first time in my life I have never clarified a they pronoun. I don't like it when people say the phrase they. Oh, scientists, meaning they have discovered something. Well, is it they? I would say this: the world is polarized. You got 1% of the world and you got 99% of the world. That comment is dead on. 2011, the Occupy movement, where the phrase 1% of our population control the wealth and resources and assets of this world, and the 99% are working for the 1%. It is as verifiable. I'll bet you could actually find information documenting that on your phone, but I think it would probably take a fair amount of time. I'm kind of discussing a lot of really disastrous and important things that are causing people to act, that are causing people to wake up, that are causing people to feel uncomfortable. The solution, there is a solution, all right? If robots were to fall out of the sky and start to destroy everything, there is a solution. And maybe this is where we need to wrap up. The solution is to control your adrenaline. The solution in the worst disaster is to not panic and is to ask yourself, where are my feet? And get present. And then say, I am living this day as my last day, so I better go out there and help my neighbor. If robots take over the world, if there is some kind of very, very elaborate invasion of the planet, very elaborate is probably the most that I want to say. And I won't even go very far. I don't want to spoil any surprises. Your number one thing to do when you see the breaking news on every single channel on television, not unlike 9/11, but affecting the entire world, the first thing you need to do is take a breath. Take 2 more breaths. Where are my feet? Am I present? I'm living today like it's my last day. I'll leave you with one more thought, and then I probably have to go unless you wanted to bring up one more thing.
Please, Jim. I'd love to hear.
Thank you. There are a lot of really famous photographs from 9/11, and I'm not talking about the upside down man. You should look up the credits on that photograph. Take your time on a laptop and look that up, and then get yourself a box of tissues so you can dry your eyes. I'm talking about photographs like the one of the fireman who has the mustache with his hat on, and he's going up the stairs in Tower 1 when everybody else is trying to get the hell out of that building and go down the stairs. And I've known a lot of firemen that were there that day, that saved lives that day and continued to work in the rubble. And if you talk to those people, you'd find conflict after mistaken information, after conflicting information left and right. You've got first-hand witnesses. I mean, but I'm in a bar, I'm buying drinks for these firemen. I mean, this is a long time ago. They told me stuff that corroborates all those whistleblower inquiries that I've talked about. But who else knows about this stuff? I'm on a podcast 20 years later talking about it. I talked about this in 2017. I was fired from my job the next day. Okay. I went back to work on the 46th floor, facing the west, facing the Hudson River with Tower 2 in full, what was in full view. And I had to go back to work in 6 days. I went back to work and I proceeded to watch the cleanup. That took many years. Well, guess what? That fire did not go out until late December of 2001. It took 3, possibly 4 months for the fire to go out. There was a hole right now where those black, dark, what do they call them? They're not reflective pools. The new memorial. They don't reflect anything. They just make you sad when you look at them, huh?
Yeah, no, I don't know what they're called, but yeah.
Yeah, but right there in the one that's the furthest south, in the southeast corner of the park, is where the Tower 2 hole basically was. And I'm talking about weeks after. I'm talking about after all the debris was cleared. The fire never went out. I mean, it was a blizzard. There was a blizzard in late December of that year, or a near blizzard, that ultimately caked the top of the hole. And you saw the firemen pumping water in there. Water was the last thing that helped that underground furnace, whatever the heck was down there. It really required I don't know why.
So you sat there 46 floors up, day in and day out, and watched that fire slowly go out.
For 2 more years, and I saw it all, and I saw the smoke that would not stop for 3 or 4 months. This is like one of those pieces of conflicting information that you just got to chalk up right alongside of World Trade 7 coming down, and the journalist from the BBC, Jane Stanley, talking about it for 30 minutes before it even came down in the afternoon that day. She claims that she made a mistake. Don't these people have earplugs? I mean, the point is, here's the real point. And then, like I said, I do have to go. I've got a meeting here in 2 minutes. There's one thing that anybody could remember from today's discussion. There is a solution for anything that's going to happen moving forward. You must stay as positive as you possibly can. Yes, love is the most powerful thing in the entire universe. You stay positive. It's not going to be easy. It will be challenging. There's going to be repetition of disaster. There's going to be emotional, psychological impact of disaster. Control your adrenaline. Do not panic. Panic just doesn't help. It makes things worse. You go to your neighbors, of course, to your immediate family. That goes without saying. You go to your neighbors and you say, can I help? You stick your hand out. You put your right hand out towards them in person. You knock on the door. This is not a text. You're not even controlling your texts. You better be in charge of your own body so that you can walk next door and say hello to your neighbors. Have you done that? You got to find out who your neighbors are. The local communities are going to save everybody. You got to not be afraid. You got to explain to your neighbor how important it is to control your adrenaline, to replace those emotional fears with any kind of glass half full, any kind of silver lining that you can possibly think of. And this is not arbitrary. You slap your thighs, you ask yourself where your feet are, and you get present, and then you teach your neighbors. This is vital information. If there's one thing that anybody needs to hear on this podcast, it is always control your adrenaline. Always use your mind, allow your emotions to follow, cool it down so that you can help others. And that is the solution. All right, Joe, I gotta go. Right on time.
Here are the other buttons, which are mostly self-explanatory. But freedom is a big thing. People will trade a lot for freedom. You could say, would you like a bad life with freedom or a good life with no freedom? And people will take the bad life with freedom. So if you ever have a chance to create a situation where you can offer someone more freedom, that's very powerful. That's a button. And you should get as much for yourself as you can. And you can use it as a tool to help other people get what they want. Because they will trade a lot for freedom. Because they will trade a lot for freedom. People will trade a lot for freedom. Because they will trade a lot for freedom. And freedom can come in the form of getting money, that gives you freedom. Having a flexible schedule, that gives you freedom. Being in the right kind of social situation gives you freedom. So there's lots of ways to get it. Fear is a motivator. I don't recommend using it unless you're trying to save somebody. Yeah, you could use fear to keep them from smoking cigarettes, for example. I wouldn't use this in the evil way. Curiosity is one of the most important and overlooked buttons on the human interface. You can see that authors that are good at it will make you curious at the end of a chapter so that you'll want to keep reading. So that you'll want to keep reading. Building curiosity into things is a really, really important button. When you can stoke somebody's curiosity, you can really shape what they do, and you can shape your environment through curiosity. Very, very powerful. But freedom is a big thing. People will trade a lot for freedom. They will trade a lot for freedom. People will trade a lot for freedom. They will trade a lot for freedom.